I got
That's why I made this.
mute this thing.
That's smart.
Well, I figured it was pretty tough to have an executive session in the house. Since I don't want to go in there. That's why.
There we go. You're going to mess us up, Steve. But I'll admit you. All that happens is you will get feedback.
We know how that goes. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, we are live.
Are we ready to go? Everybody's here?
It's 7 o'clock. We'll call our meeting order. This is the regular board meeting of the Cove School District on May 19th. Please join me in the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks everyone for being here, being available tonight. Glad to have one of these where we can actually talk to each other, see you. Next on our agenda, celebrations and recognitions. Anyone have anything you want
Well, Kelly and Kyle Langford welcomed their daughter on May 13th. I believe it's Hallie Eileen on May 13th.
Congratulations.
to? Congratulations. Not much else is happening to celebrate at this point. I know I'll say you guys are, still, as we've said before, doing a great job. Going as well as it could, I think, so keep up the good work. Couple more weeks and start planning for something else, I guess. Next up is the agenda. Any adjustments, additions, deletions, changes, requests?
Motion to accept it as presented.
I'll second.
I heard a motion, and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved.
Who was the motion made by?
And seconded by Hannah.
Steve and Hannah?
Yes.
Got it?
Next up on action items, approval of the consent agenda.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion by John and a second by Jamie. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. Next up, discussion and possible action to approve contract extension MOUs.
I presented last month based on guidance that I received from the board. We presented to the instructional staff, the teachers union, to essentially kick the can down the road with the contract for 1 year. Now it's just extended in its entirety for a year, no changes except a 2% pay increase, no changes in benefits, no other changes. They subsequently, on the 27th, I received a signed response from the association accepting that offer, if you want to call it such. And on May 12th, I received indication from the Support Staff Association of their anticipated acceptance. And again, today, I was told I'll have that by the end of the week from them. But either way, we can act to approve it's the same idea for both, a 2% pay increase, no other changes to the contract. 1 year. It's a 1 year extension. They all expire June 30th, 2021. And they had been set to expire June 30th, 2020.
So there's no legal stepping on toes, not having them except for, and then we sign it.
No, either party can accept the
It's
contract.
not viewed as us forcing the issue.
No, we're accepting this. They have to accept it. If they fail to accept it, we're back to, it's no different than the association accepting it. Or signing an MOU and waiting for us to sign it. They're waiting now for us to sign the MOU with teachers.
I guess so. I would like to publicly thank both unions for being willing to do this. I think it would have been difficult at best to do a negotiation under the current circumstances. So I guess I really appreciate them being willing to do it this way.
Yeah, I'd second that. So I think it's, yeah, it would have been nearly impossible to do it in a meaningful way.
Yeah. I guess with that being said, I move to accept the MOU. Do you want a separate motion for each, Earl?
They can be the same.
I move to accept the MOUs from both the teachers union and the classified staff.
Second. We have a motion by Don and a second by Steve. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Next up, discussion and possible action to approve first reading of policies. GBL, GBLA, GBM, JBA, JHH.
All of these policy revisions came out of OSBA last month. And they're all tied to some sort of legislation that went through last year. It's the tail end. Earlier this year, you had a pile of them, and it took some time to get these a little bit more sorted out. In the personnel records revision and disclosure of information policies, the biggest change or issue is that it allows for districts to provide otherwise confidential information to prospective employers. When somebody contacts us and wants to know about an employee, we can disclose certain information in reference to ORS 339, 388, which is report of abuse or sexual conduct. And that was kind of a sketchy area in the past.
The only thing I noticed there is on the legal references, it wasn't cross-referenced down at the bottom. I don't know if you want to add that ORS to the legal references section at the bottom. That makes sense.
It does.
I guess I had a question about the disclosure of information. So it says that you can disclose information regarding a former employee's job performance.
Yes.
What if that's in direct conflict, or does that prevent the school from making an agreement with an employee when they leave? I don't know for a fact, but I'm relatively sure that in the past,
Yes.
there have been situations where it was deemed in the best interest of both parties to say the school district would not disclose any such information about job performance and an employee left.
Yes.
How would that play out under this?
This is your policy. This is the board's policy. The board makes an agreement that's separate or different from policy. That agreement would stand. What this does is it keeps me from making any agreement like that. Only the board can do that. I can't make an agreement of non-disclosure. Only the board can, because the policy I'm going to implement. But if you, like any other policy, if you act separately on a instance that's not exactly with the policy, they're your policies. It's no different than you can grant exceptions to policies. I wouldn't recommend making that a big habit, but you can. It does not preclude you from ever making a non-disclosure agreement if you believe that that's the best interest.
And then I guess a follow-up to that, does it complicate that non-disclosure agreement if this is the policy, say 6-8 years down the road?
Not if the board acted on it at the time of the policy. I mean, it still is going to be in effect.
I'm more concerned about you get a request, we've had a change of superintendent, a change of board. Is there a mechanism, or will there be a mechanism in place to ensure that, you see what I'm saying? You've made an exception to a policy, 6-8 years go by, someone requests that, and now you've got these two conflicting deals. I'm not worried about somebody not following the intent of the board. I'm worried about them not knowing about it. An accidental disclosure.
It is a challenge to keep track of all of that, because if you get down to the nitty gritty, across the top of every one of these policies is a series of dates. And that's there for a reason, because the policy in effect at the date of the time of the agreement would be the policy that you would have to follow, at that. You can't subsequently go back and change what you had done prior. So yes, it's very difficult to administer, but just like every policy, when you go back in history for something, it becomes very challenging, because you have to go back in the books and find the prior policies and what they said. But yeah, it's hard, John. I can see how people can miss it.
I think it'd be very easy to miss.
Yeah, I'm just thinking in a case like that, when somebody would request information likely about a specific former employee.
Correct, yeah.
So you would think if there was a new person there, you would think they would go research that file and hopefully in the file see that agreement that says, hey, you can't release this. But right, yeah, without it, it's certainly possible. But
Fortunately, that's not a common occurrence. I think I've had 2 or 3 since I've been here. It's not something that we get often, fortunately. Places that are much bigger have a department that handle that. They do know all the details because they have the people and the systems in place. Frankly, we're not going to have those kinds of systems in place without having a staff to manage that system. Okay.
Do you know of any policies that deal directly with non-disclosure agreements?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
You just can't unplug, can you, Steve?
Well, you can search all the policies online. And just take-
I don't think
I wanted to be, contributory.
There's just one small typo there on GBL, personnel records, number 3, comptroller, is it the controller or auditor? Is it comptroller?
It's a comptroller.
Is that a real thing?
Yeah.
Maybe that-
So I go on to the next set, the sexual harassment. Sexual harassment, it was actually recommended by OSBA that we delete our current policy and adopt the other one. This was not me just not lining out or highlighting. They said that there were so many changes that you need to just do it this way, and I said, okay. So you have a copy of our current with where I just wrote delete across the front, so you have it for reference. And the sexual harassment policy, there's a new definition of sexual harassment that clarifies certain aspects of reporting and investigative process. And that was under House Bill 3077, and that's what this is all in response to, is to align our policy with that latest legislation.
I still object to the fact that we're supposed to police people that aren't directly under our control. That's no change from, we hashed this out last year.
We had this discussion.
I'm gonna reiterate, I still dislike that.
And just a note here, notice that these policies are TBN/JBA. When they're actually adopted, they'll be filed in 2 spaces. You just reverse the letters. So it's also JBA, GBN, they're identical policies. They're just filed in two different places because the same policy applies to both students and staff. G is staff and J is students. The actual forms that go with the AR didn't change at all. And finally, the one that will require the most work to implement, well, you have an AR about special education evaluation eligibility procedures put in there as well. That's one that is for your information. It requires now that in any evaluation, you have consideration of medical, sensory, and health information prior to the evaluation being done. That's the only change. Before you can do an evaluation, you have to have all of that information in addition to what you've always had.
Is there a person, like an ESD person who performs those? or
There's a
is this-
map that gathers that. The sped director will gather that information.
So they have to
And
get
then the
physician,
what do you call it? Testing person, what's the called?
Diagnostician.
Diagnostician actually assembles the evaluation. The sped director ensures that all those elements are in place before the evaluation. And
So the only thing I'm curious about, like, so a physician comes up with a diagnosis, and it's not an educator's responsibility to do something about that. Where does the
yes, actually, yes.
accommodate it?
Yes, because in special education, there's one category, it's called health impaired. That straight up is a medical diagnosis. And it is the school's responsibility to provide accommodations for any of the medical that can have a significant impact on the education.
I guess my question is this diagnostician, is that the person who is able to distill all of the information that comes in to give a meaningful recommendation?
Right, well, there's an example right here, working on one now. There's a so federal government has established different categories of disability, learning, related to learning. One is, the most common is a disability related to a specific area, reading, writing, math, in education. But as Mr. Pettit pointed out, there's one that's called other health impaired, which is a mile wide. It requires by federal law and state law that you have a doctor's statement that clearly explains from a doctor's perspective what the issue is with a doctor, and a doctor making a recommendation to some degree as to how that might be addressed in a school setting.
The actual outcome of the evaluation is done by, it's really done by the team though. You put the team together, the IEP team, it's the same thing. It's a multidisciplinary team. And you have, oftentimes in my past, when we've had a health impaired student, we have the health professional in the room at the meeting as part of that team. Yeah, you take all kinds of different considerations in, and frankly, this isn't anything that we haven't been doing when it was applicable anyway. What it does now is says we have to consider it for all. So we have to know, is there a medical, beforehand. Before we can even start the evaluation process to determine if they're eligible for special education. That's what that's all about.
So does that mean that every time that you think there's a student that is in need of special education, we're gonna have to have a doctor evaluate it?
No, we have to consider medical information. Oftentimes you get that information from the parents most often.
So, right, so are we required to go look for that information? I mean, if a parent is
Are we
Doesn't
required to
provide-
request it? Yes.
So here's the difference. In the past, so before, we don't just randomly grab a kid and start testing. There's underlying issues over time that typically come to the attention of school staff and or parents, or ideally, both together recognize, appears we may have a problem. You begin looking deeper as to what that problem might be and how it might be addressed. You try different interventions and strategies, different learning, different teaching techniques, and so on. Will this help? Will that help? And so on. So at some point, if you come to the decision, we need to test further, now you're moved into up to that point, you're just using your typical teacher skills to address a concern. Once it becomes, this might be a special ed issue, now you're going by the book, boom, boom, boom. All we're doing now is asking, where before it was, you would ask a specific question related to a specific issue. For example, if you saw a health impairment that seemed to be impacting education, you would ask, Mom, Dad, have you been to the doctor? Okay, in this case, we're going to ask that question with all instead of just some. That's the only difference. It's not a huge change. And it's not far different. It's not a big step from what we're already doing.
Is it kind of a good thing? Does it give you another tool in your toolbox?
It could. The answer is always, it depends. But yes, it's here's what happens sometimes. This is what I'm reviewing right now, is a case where a specific learning disability, this particular student, basically that didn't address, she no longer qualified for those services based on the law in that particular category. What we sometimes do when we know, okay, now the student doesn't qualify there, but there's still obviously a problem, is there something else going on? And so we start digging deeper and consider beyond what we looked at before. And that's where often that's the category we go to, other health impairment. Is there some other health impairment that's impacting the student success here at school? And if so, what is it? And how might it be addressed in the school setting? So it's you're playing a detective in terms of looking for that. And it's, as Mr. Pettit pointed out, it's often when you get to that stage, it's a team effort. Often you bring in other specialists to assist with that. Typically that's on parents are going to the doctor and so on. In some cases, school districts have been known to assist with that. Since my time here in this district, we've only had one case where the school was involved directly with working with the medical staff, and it's because the parent needed assistance. I'll leave it at that.
And the policy adoption that will require, you'll have some future review as well. Next fall, you'll get to see what our plan template will be, because the suicide prevention, student suicide prevention program or policy. If you'll recall, about a year ago, we went through and talked about functional behavioral assessment. And that is threat assessment. When a student has, we have a protocol that we try to follow and trying to determine if we have a legitimate threat to the school from a student or really anywhere else, but it's really about students. We had the same thing with suicide prevention, and it came out of the same legislation. It just took a long time for the state to get all the regulations together to drive the policy. And this policy is the model policy of OSBA. when it says the plan shall include at a minimum, and there's a list of 8 things, those you can actually reference straight up in the OAR. So, and the state says thou shalt have this policy with this in it. I've become one of those people that kind of wonders why we make policies when there's a regulation already in existence. But we make the policy to match the regulation because the regulation says thou shalt have a policy that says this. So, at any rate, the piece of this that is going to have a real impact, or you should be, looking at very closely, is the next phase. Over the summer, I will do a couple of trainings, and I will make up a template that is for us to follow that includes all of these things, so that we have a checklist. So when something happens, whenever you have an incident, you know that there's always an element of chaos and confusion. And if you don't have a procedure with a checklist in place for any kind of emergency situation, then you're going to miss things. And so that's the objective now. Is this policy says that we shall have a suicide prevention plan for students in kindergarten through grade 12. And that's what your policy will say. And then my response will be, okay, here is our comprehensive student suicide prevention plan that I should present to you sometime this month.
One of those things where we get to adopt policy. What do you think about it?
Well, it's still code school. If you don't want to, I think I've advised you before. Frankly, on this one, it's just one of those things you go, yeah, okay, it doesn't harm, in creating this plan. Okay, but in some of the policies, it's still code school district. You're still elected officials. And the policy doesn't align with the community, you feel strongly about it. You can choose not to comply, and we have, since I've been here every year, not complied with something. It's called Vision 22 report. I always mark you somewhere on that. And that's our report back, and all of this stuff, this one will be a new report on the Division 22 report, which, oh, by the way, is due in November this year. So, mark it down. You'll be getting that one in November. And it is what it is. I wouldn't buck this policy at all. It doesn't harm. It creates a protocol. It's no. So,
Yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting not to do it.
That's not what it'll look like when it gets cut and pasted off of YouTube.
No, Derek, I think to your point, there's a handful of things that, what is our mission?
Yeah.
Provide education.
Yeah, it's not about.
Are we a social services conduit?
Right.
Absolutely, we've become that, but is that really a mission? We built the walls and told our kids to go to school and everything, so. How big does this umbrella get? And it's just so we'll continue to vision and eyes and teeth and mental health and make sure you got a meal all summer and
We do dental checks.
we do. There's a dental screening. I don't know. Hearing and vision.
this district has kept a focus on that core mission very well, in my opinion. Paying attention to educating paying attention to the future from the educational perspective of our students. Today, we can see another time, an example, and time passing, where you can see the impact on schools that have not, that have expanded into so many of the social sectors. Because those are the schools right now that are laying off people that don't have enough money and can't operate without more money. And for all that has gone on here, we can breathe. We've got time to now figure out what's going to be the impact of any budget cuts and things like that. And we don't have to do any kind of great reaction or, significant reaction in our core operations. And the more that spreads into the social aspects of raising children, the more expensive it gets. And the schools that have done that are now the ones that are, well, they have some budget woes.
I'm gonna help you with this one more time. In our strategic plan, we say that the board believes a student's attitude and self-image are key factors in his or her educational success. So this would play into the mental health, well-being, and that. Right there online, John.
Good. Proud of you. I hope you're not Googling while you're drilling on people's teeth.
I try to teach you to be a multitasker.
That's
We
what
haven't gotten that
Alexa-
good yet.
Alexa's for that.
I thought the Google Glass was going to do it. Would you people like to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Subject.
Move to accept the first reading of policies GBL, GBLA, GBN/JBA, IGBAH, AR, and JH as presented. Direct the superintendent to compile public or board member input concerning the revisions for presentation during the June regular meeting. I'll second that.
For a fantastic motion by Jamie and a second by Hannah. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Next up, we'll go to reports and discussion items. We had any board requested items, so looks like the deputy clerk is up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, I want to point out that on the distribution report that we accepted earlier in the meeting, there is the UMQA credit card payment is not on there. I will include that on next month's. I will take next month's and go back to 4/28, which is where the date that it was posted on. I didn't get a chance to get it posted by the time I needed to get these financials out. So I just wanted to point that out. The credit card payments are not on there, but I will backdate next month's report, so it will show those payments. On the monthly board report, everything is pretty much in line. If you see, about a lot of the grants are coming through. I have requested a couple more grants that are not on there yet because it takes them about a week and a half to 2 weeks to get them to us. And then I have, I believe, 2 more grants to request. I'm waiting for the expenditures to total up to the grants so I can request them correctly. Other than that, everything out on there is looking correct so far. All the expenses look good, so percentage wise. And then on the on-demand report for the Fund 180 for the cafeteria plan.
Amy?
Yeah.
I did you a disservice. You forwarded that to me late and I did not forward it to the board, and I thought of it as I'm sitting here. So you can talk through it. I'll forward it to them, but you can tell them what it says.
Say that again? I
I
missed
did
it.
not get that report that you had sent you sent it after I mailed out the stuff and.
Okay, so I'll just do a review of it and then I'll email it all to you tomorrow. So currently, year-to-date transactions as of the date that I printed this which was May 13th. The year-to-date transactions is $1,704,191. I did just print a check. I believe it was after I printed this report. I believe it was for $123,000. So prior to that, the unexpended balance is $195,000. So we still have that much to expend out. But like I said, I just wrote a check for 123, I believe it was 123,000. So that's about all I got for you. I can email out those reports to you tomorrow for the Fund 180 for the cafeteria plan. Any questions?
Questions for Amy?
Do you normally write $1 million worth of checks in a month? Disbursement detail, I don't usually notice.
Not on a normal basis, but there has been a couple of months with the cafeteria project going on that between that and the regular payables, I have become really, really close.
Somebody's hands are really tired.
That'd be Mr. Pettit's.
Anything else for Amy? Thanks.
You're welcome.
Next up, the superintendent report.
You have probably all been tracking different conversations going around about budget and big picture and whatnot. The forecast is tomorrow. Release is supposed to be tomorrow, and there's a webinar I think you were all invited to as well. It's through OSBA on Thursday, where they're going to talk about the impacts of what happened on Wednesday. I'll be participating in both of those. But right now, I don't have any information that changes my assessment from the budget committee. We budgeted for a 10%. That's my guess. We'll see where it comes out. The state has threatened has said the 17%. But that's before they touched any rainy day funds or legislature got a hold of it or anything else. And I think that 10% is conservative budgeting. I think it'll be less than that as far as our actual cut. And then we have a contingency, as we recall, of 10%. So even if it is 17%, we still have enough in our budget to operate with the way it was set up. And then we have, we're good, especially because of the planning for the following year. So I'll see how it comes out and I'll let you know. I'll give you a report on it as soon as I know anything about it. And especially as soon as and if I know anything that changes my assessment. Because right now, I see us that I'm really pleased with the way the budgeting came out. It's a lot. Sometimes it's luck combined, but mostly it's about careful planning and over time with the board and the administration keeping the focus on what we're supposed to be doing. And we just wrote a budget with a 10% cut and still project carryover. So, and a lot of it has to do with timing because we also did reduce staff through natural attrition at the same time. That had a huge impact. I'll let you know how the forecast comes out. You'll be reading about it, I'm sure, by tomorrow evening somewhere in the news sources. Fall opening. I can tell you where I'm coming from.
I'd really like to hear where you're coming from because I'm hearing lots of things about you.
Well, that's great.
Lots of things that you said.
What a great chance to set the record straight.
Great. I have said from the start that the quickest path to normalcy will have the greatest, positive impact on our student learning. One of the things that we've really figured out in the last couple of weeks, and I think the teachers will report, I will present you data next month that shows, because we're able to do some assessments and things that shows, oh my, we're not so good at this distance learning, and our students are not learning very well. At best, we've got students holding back. That's our best case. We've got a bunch of them that are going backwards as far as performance goes. You give the same test that you gave 3 months ago now, and they do worse. That I do. And so if we're going to impact our mission, we're going to operate the school to the fullest extent that we can, as quickly as we can. Now, what that means is next fall, because we're done this year. It's not going to happen. We know that. If given the latitude, I will be leading the district to open as fully as is allowed. Unless there, and I think in the conversations, you're going to see as time passes more and more push to local control. There's my prediction. You're going to see it get pushed down because of the pushback that's happening everywhere. It seems to be now, who would have thought that we would have a county plan a month ago? That came out of the blue, and then the districts are starting to give it too, because there's pushback saying the state control of every move you make in every school doesn't fit everywhere. Well, okay, figuring that out. So on June 8th, we're going to get guidance from ODE. That's their target. When I'm supposed to know what the rules are for next fall. June 8th. So I told you before that the June board meeting, I should be able to present you a plan. Here's what my plan will not look like. It will not be 127 pages, like the one that we're supposed to be following from ODE right now for our daily operations. You can't even read the whole thing, let alone implement it. I'm looking for a 2 to 3 page document that includes everything that's critical for how we're going to be operating, and something that people here can fully understand. We don't know what's happening with sports. That's an OSAA call as far as the high school goes. I know that I know what the general feel is. They want sports, and that's the push they're getting from schools and from their constituents, the people that are involved in OSAA. They want it to happen in some form or fashion. I hear from my peers, and there's several of them out there that are that have the idea, the same basic idea as me, and that is we're going to do everything we can to be open in the fall. And to do otherwise is going to, I think it's going to do a whole lot of harm. But with all that said, you can't predict the future. You don't know. Something could happen. There could be a significant medical event locally. There could be something happening that changes. But asking right now, philosophically, I'm not looking to continue the operation with distance learning. Frankly, I got to wonder if what we just did was beneficial as far as learning goes. We know the benefits with maintaining a connection. That's what our goal was when we set out, and we've done that. But as far as actual progressing and learning, there's not a whole lot of evidence to show that what we're doing is producing smarter kids.
So at what point are we going to be given, or more than likely, at what point do we take the opportunity to reflect on this and push back as a learning. I mean, I can't, personally, we should have been in school this whole time, in my opinion, in Union County or in Cove. And obviously, you're telling us that our kids basically haven't learned anything this term, so they've lost an entire term. And my concern is, what if we are in a, what if we're in a, what if the virus does hit in the fall? Now we've lost 2 terms when we should have only lost 1. At what point do we get an opportunity to push back to ODE in an official capacity and say, hey, you guys really, screwed the pooch on this one, and this is why, and we need to learn. You can't go back and unring the bell, but you can damn sure learn from it if you're willing.
Well, I would say that the pushback, that idea of trying to get constructive input to the Department of Education leadership is not now. Because when you do it under the time of emergency, nobody wants to talk. It ends up being, well, this is our emergency guidance, and you shall, and we're getting that shoved. And I heard recently the same kind of in an international level, same kind of idea going with the World Health Organization, that they're talking about, well, we need to look into it. These other countries, I'm not talking about our own, going to look into it, but then they say, yeah, but we're not going to look into it until it's over, because it's ineffective. You can look into it now, but all you do is create more, chaos. And if your objective is to learn from it, then we need to find a time where it's over. The problem with that, of course, is once it's over, we're going to be real busy because we've been in a holding pattern, and now we're going to be trying to get things accomplished. And I don't know, it's a difficult thing, John. I don't think anybody would be surprised to hear me say that I absolutely agree with you. We should have been in school all this time. And I think I've expressed that opinion. And we're going to get back to school as quickly as we can. But there are still certain rules that we're going to need to play. We're going to need to follow. And it comes back to, are we going to, I'm not willing to stand and defy all the rules. I don't think that that's productive for the school district. I am willing to be the guy that says these rules are dumb, and here's why, and argue against them. And I've been doing that all along. I don't know. We have talked about what we're going to do in the fall. We've started chatting about it here, but that talk kind of went to the side now. I was trying to start developing a plan to present to you in June, when I'm told that on June 8th, we're going to hear what the state says, this is what you're going to do. Well, or here's what your options are. It's kind of like graduation. We had an idea for graduation. And then when we're halfway done planning our graduation, then the state tells us, here's graduation guidance, everybody in the state must follow. Well, okay, now I have to make sure we plug into what rules you're giving us. So by June, all I can tell you is that I will be assertive until this board or this community tells me otherwise in opening to the maximum extent possible.
Just for clarification, the difference between a thou shalt is an ORS, right? An OAR. And guidance, is that a shall or is that a guidance?
It's guidance. I mean, I had this argument. I actually presented the argument. I used the law dictionary, sent it to them, saying this is what guidance is defined as, and you keep calling this guidance. Guidance doesn't have a penalty, and you don't start saying, well, if you don't follow my guidance, it's plus this.
And I guess that's what gets me from a risk management lens, looking at through that lens. When we don't follow guidance, what risk do we take? Money? I mean, do they turn off the spigot?
I've had that conversation, and all I can tell you is that in my 20 years of leading school districts, and I've asked the same question many times of different entities that say, we control the money, if you don't, we're going to take it away. I asked him, how many times has that ever happened? Have you ever done that? No, not a one. So, I don't know.
And are there other risks? I mean, do we find ourselves in the line?
Look, I'm approaching this as mitigating risk to the community, to the people we serve, to the kids, and I will weigh those things very heavily and how I present a plan to you of what we should be doing. Of course, you have the final say in whatever that plan will be. This isn't something that I can go off and do on my own. I guess technically it is, but boy, I'd be a fool to do that. So I'm just telling you that, my philosophy, and if your philosophies are very different, I want to know so that I don't spend a whole lot of resources coming up with something doesn't have a chance of going anywhere. I don't want to buck the system. I believe that the community and the feedback I've received is we need to be in school. And that comes from staff, parents, the people I've been in contact with around here. And so I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen.
I would agree, that's the same message I have received.
I'd say, yeah, we need to do school and what we're doing now. From my personal experience, it's not working for my students. Yeah, and I think whatever we do, we just have to be smart and reasonable about it. I mean, we don't want to blatantly do things that aren't unsafe or, thumbing our nose at people.
Mitigating risk.
Yeah.
But
But at some
And I
point,
think,
the risk is like the risk of losing progress academically. You have to weigh those options.
And I think that's really important, is when we talk about risk, our job is to educate our kids. And we're all on the board because we have kids in the school. And particularly, I think, I'm guessing a little bit because I'm not a teacher, but especially these high school kids. I mean, this has the potential. I mean, there's a ton of studies out there about economics, and if you graduate during recession, which is a little bit different story, but that haunts you for a decade. I think this is a very similar deal. You don't get the foundation you need coming out of high school. That may haunt you for a decade or longer in potential earnings and where you can go in life. So we got to remember that we need to balance this social risk or the risk of ruffling feathers with the risk to our students. And I agree. In this situation, we shouldn't thumb our nose at but by the same token, I don't think we should roll over and play dead either. We need to remember the risk there's a lot of different risk.
Yeah, I mean, risk and everything is, I was just thinking like the risk management things, Steve. I mean, yeah, if we blatantly ignore all the guidelines and sure, the staff member gets sick and
You deserve it, but you can do things that are reasonable.
Right, I think if we do things in a reasonable way,
Not a risk.
solid decision making behind it.
And this is all just spitball. I'm looking at your crystal ball.
Right.
There's this June 8th,
Right.
whatever guidance, then you can actually put some teeth into it and decide what you're gonna do.
Well, and even then, between June and September, who knows what happens?
But I think it's important for us to have this conversation where we have some coalescence around a feeling as some guidance as the plan gets crafted to
Yes.
be able to execute, and that we vocalize this so we don't have rampant rumors running around going, well, Mr. Pitt said this, the board's saying that.
The question that has come up to me, I guess, is, whatever it looks like, whether it's school like we had it 6 months ago, everybody in a classroom, or if it's, staggered schedules or whatever it ends up being, is the budgetary impacts, what do we need to do as far as, are there capital improvements or outlays that we need to do to make those things happen? I've been responding that I think we're in fine financial shape to handle that kind of impact if we needed to do something.
Well, it's not unlike the situation we're in right now. We're saving some money in certain areas. Transportation is running at 50% of our cost or less, and not less than that. And our food service is costing a lot more. And in the end, we're running right where we're supposed to be, in financially. So while there may be some adjustments depending on how the plan is, I don't see that we don't already have a budget set up for that. And if I do discover that we don't, well, I'll be coming back to you saying we need $25,000 or something, put it into something that we didn't budget for.
I think our school district is a little more nimble in that we have larger physical space, smaller class sizes to be able to adjust to mitigate that risk easier than larger districts do. And keep the day looking more.
Which is why I see a trend starting that I'm really happy about of empowering the local districts to have more control as to how they're going to do it. Because we're not Salem or Portland Public. We're very different.
Did you see you have to present our plan to anyone, or the
No.
guidance comes out, you write the plan,
Right.
and we kind of agree on?
Right. Well, I'm going to write a plan. I'm going to present it to you, so I make sure everybody's on board with it. There isn't any technical requirement anywhere for the plans to be approved. I mean, we didn't have to write a plan for what we're doing right now. We just had to follow what they told us to do. And in the accountability piece to the state is what accountability piece? Quite frankly, there isn't one. The accountability comes in with the state with what you're doing right now, based upon when somebody else to the state saying you're not doing it. Well, now they've gotten out of it. As for instance, so. But I will ensure that whatever plan I have, in fact, I will ask you for your formal blessing, your action on that plan. While I don't know where in policy it would be necessary, it's a proven thing to do right here.
How do we address that? I mean, operational changes with staff who don't have to be here over the summer to help implement or be educated on a new plan. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe staff goes back a week before.
Well, the staff's already going to be here at least 2 days out. We've already got a training scheduled, most times. The usual required all of trying to jump through all the hoops that we already have. But we do have the ability to have staff work additional days. We've done it before. I did it last year when we had some training and different things. We do have it in our budget capacity for, if I remember right, I should have about 2 days of all staff in a certain line with an improvement line where I could call it in for certain things. But I don't know that would be necessary. I want to say one really important thing. When we're saying that we're not doing really well right now, that's true. I mean, academically, we're not soaring.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that.
But man,
our
teachers.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, my comment was not directed at teachers at all.
Well, it's a system. This is a system that is a non-workable system.
Yeah.
If you're looking for true achievement, you're going to have a handful of kids that will achieve in any system, and they are right now. But most of them will end up treading water at best right now.
That's crossed all grades.
And it's really surprising to parents and kids and stuff. When teachers first started, and a couple of them were trying to give them their work, like, okay, I'll cut my work in half, and they'll set it, and they'll freak out. Oh my God, all of this? It's like, you already cut it in half. And just the eye opener to the people involved at how much a student actually does at school in a day. If you follow all the lesson plans and how much they actually produce or do. And because they're doing a fraction of it now, and they're still not anymore, but there was still pushback on, you know, they're working all day. It's like, okay, well, all right. It's been a learning experience. I learned that I'm not a big fan of online schools.
I think we all appreciate our teachers. Yeah, unless you have a parent or somebody at home that can sit next to them.
Even that, I mean, the parents that are home are struggling
Yeah.
to fight every day.
Yes, I'm one of those.
That's the worst too, probably when your parent is an educator. Oh, man.
Graduation's coming together. You know, we made a commitment weeks ago, months ago, shoot, a long time ago, that we were gonna run graduation on time. And one way or another, kids gonna walk out that day with a diploma with their name on it. So it's coming together. It's now scheduled for 11 on the 30th. It's fascinating how it's come together and the players involved to make it all work. There'll be a lot of things that are a little different, obviously. The ceremony itself, as of today, will be entirely recorded. In other words, it is a radio production recording. So the players will be listening to the radio cue as to when they go get their diploma, for example. All the speeches of kids are pre-recorded on the radio. It's all being broadcast and it's being run through the radio. Originally, we had thought about, we wanted to use the radio for communication and make it sound something like when you go to a game, they call a game, and you have, people music, that kind of stuff. But for a number of reasons, that isn't going to work. So this is the way we're putting it together now. The good news is we know how long it's going to be. Here it is. And the slideshow will be posted the day ahead, and it will not be part of that. It'll be posted, and kids can watch it, and we'll be pushing it to watch. But and then we'll have a live feed going on. But the sound for the live feed will be the radio feed with the camera. So you understand the mic is just the radio. So now you're watching, you can watch it on YouTube 15 seconds later if you want. Because 14, because YouTube is 14 seconds behind. So they're just hearing me now talk about YouTube.
So what exactly will it look like? I've actually had a number of people
The
ask
gist
that.
of it.
Yeah, the gist of it.
The gist of it, the football field out here, the grandstands. Near the top of the grandstands, we're putting a platform out there with rails and everything. The kids will go up the grandstands. That's their stage. They got a high stage. At the top, they'll get their diploma, go back down, and then they're going to actually line up and do a walk through the school at the end. But to get in there to start the ceremony, I don't know the timing yet. They're working it out, Matt, Lisa. So at like say 10:30, the cars will come in. We have 3 deputies, we have fire department, and we have our own volunteers. And it will work like this. Oh, you're driving in, you go to the next, you park right here, park right here. Next guy, so there'll be a line to park everybody. Boom. You don't get a choice where you're parking. You're parking where you're set. There should be 3 rows of cars with sideways. The spaces are 12 feet. You end up with somewhere around 6 feet between cars. That's the goal, trying to get 6 feet between cars. And the forward and back, we're 10 feet between, at least 10 feet. If you're in a full-size 20-foot car, then it's 10 feet front to back. So, being a driver, you know that once you're in that row, you aren't leaving until the row in front of you leaves because you're lined up. And when we did the math on it, figuring out we can put as many people in cars out there as we put in the stands for graduation. This idea of do we need to limit the numbers? No, we don't.
So in other words, it'll be open to the public. You can show up in your car.
You can show up in your car, you stay in your car, you listen to the radio. We'll tell you what station it's on, and you can watch everything that's happening.
And the students will come in a car, and then they'll just get out when it's their
So
turn.
after all of the cars are parked out here at, say, 11, 5 minutes to 11, whatever, students come marching in, due to the pop of circumstance, it doesn't be planned, they'll come marching in cars. In the passenger side, this is the guidance they got. The passenger's side, with a parent or adult relative driving, they're in the passenger side, and it is a enclosed vehicle. Not the back of the pickup, not on a motorcycle, not a tractor bucket, not all the things we've heard asked. No, it's in an enclosed vehicle, and I'm encouraging them to make it a car if you have a choice, because, you know, you get the tall pickup, the guy behind you is not gonna see so well, because you're in the front row. So, you know, be nice. And they can have whoever they want in the backseat. You don't care. So it's their family in that car. Now their family has the front row, because they're with them. The kid's name's called, the student's name's called, you know, they go up, they get their diploma. During all of that time, Matt will be, or somebody will be saying a story, it'll be all recorded about that student. We're filling in all the time, so there's no radio dead time. And I go back and line up. So there's no flowers, although I've heard the suggestion of passing, you know, toilet paper, but instead of toilet paper, you think it's a commodity now. There's no flower ceremony. Those things are just out. But there are all the speeches from the kids that will be recorded, and we'll make it happen. I think the last thing they're going to do, because I specifically requested it, my fault, is they're going to walk through the high school.
So are you gonna hand the diplomas out? You'll be handing the diplomas out then?
Well, me and one of you. There's only, I'm trying to just limit it so there's only 2 bodies up there on the stage, me and one of you. So, me in the chair. Unless there was somebody else.
Volunteers? Anybody have a? No, and you got to sign the diploma, you might as well hand them.
I will sort through them, and you will hand them. Yes, you are. We will have a sanitizer at the base of both ends of the steps. Specifically set that up that way so that on the way up, on the way down. Okay, gotta go back. And now we'll get there. Other questions about graduation? It's gonna be interesting.
It's like Cars movies. Cars graduation.
Yeah.
The kids are being really restricted as far as the vehicles and stuff because of controls, that we're trying to follow the rules. So the questions of, well, can that be in a convertible? We have the tops up. Those kind of, you need to be in an enclosed vehicle, because what the state has said is in any group gatherings, you can't exceed 25 at your graduation. And then they said later, if you're inside of an enclosed vehicle, it doesn't count. Well, that was Earl that asked the question, how come you're not going to close down the interstate when you tell me you can't have that many people in one area? It's like, well, you're all in their cars. So then they came back and said, yeah, they're in their cars and whatever. So we set it up that way, trying to comply. And that's why that is. However, I do anticipate cars to be heavily decorated. And they will parade, they will stage down at the Methodist Church, and they will parade in just like their march, only it's a car march. And there should be 17 of them, and they'll hopefully park quickly because the radio will be playing. Otherwise, they'll be starting the national anthem while the cars are still parking. That is what it is.
Somebody ought to be on the pause button.
Well, I think we have people that know, I think we have ways of making big corrections if we need to. I also want to mention the food service. I didn't have that on there, but let me just update your reminder that next Friday is the last day we are operating it. I've heard rumors that I don't know, that another local organization was looking at picking it up. But tomorrow there will be a flyer that goes out to everybody that says, you know, hi there, we're not delivering on Monday. We will be delivering your two meals on Friday. I probably will make it to Saturday, that's okay. But we're not delivering on Monday. And the 29th is our end date. And then there's a whole page of resources that they can go to past our time. And that goes out tomorrow.
Really appreciate all the hard work. That's a huge community benefit, and I've had tremendous feedback on that one. So those are dollars well spent. That's a very appreciative community, in my opinion.
People are getting tired. You know, it's really a struggle in a big picture right now with school, because the employees are getting kind of tired of, whether it's a teacher or support staff, you know, working in the kitchen every day and doing this over and over. It's getting kind of tired of it.
Yeah, they're used to getting feedback every day.
Yes.
And that's, yeah, it is hard.
And yeah, I just want to say again that I appreciate everything the staff has done. It's made mine and Matt's jobs easier, as we're trying to sort all this stuff out and then filter it, whatever guidance is coming, that we can tell them that. And they've caught me a couple times that, hey, well, what, I thought we were supposed to do, yeah, I didn't pass that one to you. It's because honestly, there's a day that goes by that we don't get more out of somebody at ODE says, you need to do this, or you need something else. And we filter it. And we're able to do that because our staff is doing their jobs.
Are there any other questions for Earl? Next up is future agenda items. Sounds like next month might be a little busy then.
Well, we have you should be getting when we talk about reopening, presenting a plan. I don't know if I'll be asking at that point for action on that, or if we'll wait until July to act on it. So we kind of deal with it like a policy adoption, get some time, see what's happening, people time to think about it. We also have the budget hearing next month. Remember that our budget hearing is at, because of according to our calendar and our postings and everything, the budget hearing should be at 6:30. And what we've done the last couple of years here is run them as two separate meetings. It's clean. Which would be suggested, especially now, because when you run the budget hearing, you're going to need to run it in a webinar format so that you can allow people to chime in on the computer. The restrictions as we have them right now with public meetings, right now they run through July 6th. I'm curious where our end date was as of today. But that's only because that's when all the orders expire right now.
July 6th.
July 6th.
No, I didn't know that. I wondered about that.
Which is why on the 4th of July, all the fireworks shows are now being canceled. I only know it because I drive them every year, and I'm not working this year because Monument, Prairie City, Condon, they all canceled their shows because they had to. The other thing is the confidential staff salary schedules and contracts. And just a heads up for you, starting this month, my contract is eligible for renewal.
So my
list, because I think we're supposed to have our check-in
Right.
meeting next month as well, so. Yeah, we should plan on executive session for that.
Yeah, today's election day, primary day. It's been a year. How long have you been at this too?
Just one, July, I think, July.
You got voted for last year, today.
There's tough competition.
You always kind of want to go down to the clerk's office and see who the write-ins were. Did Elvis or Mickey Mouse have a better chance?
Could have, yeah.
I never thought about that either. I guess you could do that. The sequels.
Gotta be kind of entertaining for them.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything for next month?
Sure.
Anybody else have anything for tonight?
I would move to adjourn. Second.
Motion by Jamie and a second by Hannah. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
This is a matching pen.
That's close to a record.
Yeah.
That's normal or?
Normal, yeah, no.
It's just the way it came out.
COVID didn't affect.
So last one, we were looking at Nebraska or something.
Might affect us.
My
Some of
mom,
our-
right?
some of our-
Parts of code don't have it. That's not close.
Have a good evening, y'all.
Bye.
Did you plant different crops or did you not?
I actually had to totally change my rotation.
Did you end our broadcast?
So the whole family, we
This
did
year?